Hey bitches, this is Morgan,
Hey, it's Sierra.
and you aren't ready for this episode.
And this is Bitches and Murders.
Yes, and this is Bitches and Murders.
Emphasis on the bitch because that's what Morgan is today.
Excuse me, I'm being bit by a trash panda. Don't mind me.
Okay, well, she's dealing with that situation. Let me give you some information on why this is going to be fucking horrific. And it's because before I went into biomedical research, I was a vet tech. And I got really good at emotionally detaching myself from situations. And, like, I don't get fazed by very much. And Morgan has made it her sole purpose in life to try to make me very uncomfortable with the cases that she is presenting.
I'm really good at it.
So I have no idea what's about to happen. And she's going to try her damnedest to make me uncomfortable, which means that you guys are probably going to need a barf bucket. I'm so sorry.
Oh, at least you don't have to see the pictures. The pictures are the worst part.
Pictures?
Oh, there's...
Why are you
That was my
doing
phone,
this to
RIP.
me?
Yeah, there's pictures.
I thought we were friends.
Oh, we are. We're best friends. That's why this is happening. Okay, bitches. So today, we're going to talk about Andre Chikatilo.
Wait, why does that name sound familiar?
Oh, you've probably heard about him. He's pretty famous. He was Russia's first, like, big serial killer ever.
Isn't he called like the Russian Ripper or something like that?
Yeah, he's called,
no.
the Maniac, the Butcher of Rostov, the Red Ripper, and the Rostov Ripper. Oh, yeah.
I hate you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God.
Okay, so we're going to start
No.
with his early life.
How about we don't?
He was born October 26 in 1936 in... Oh, man. Okay, so this is all happening in Russia, in the Soviet Union. Well, actually, it starts in the Ukraine. I'm not Russian. I don't know how to say Russian names or Ukrainian names. So this is about to be a hot mess, and I apologize. I do have a friend that's Russian, but I didn't get a hold of him in time. I almost lost the trash panda. We're good. Okay. Okay, so he was born October 26, 1936 in Yabloknoy. That definitely was said wrong, which is a village in rural Ukraine. During the 1930s, if you don't know this, which why would you? Ukraine was known as the breadbasket of the Soviet Union, like the USSR. So pretty much what they would do is Ukraine was way better at producing... hold on, we're going to pause this for a second. Hello, mister. He's just really climbing all over the place. He's like hard to hold on to. I don't want to drop him. Okay, but during the 1930s, they were like the breadbasket. So what that means is essentially they were way, way better at growing crops than Russia is, just because Russia is so cold.
Weird flex, but okay.
Yeah, but so essentially what they would do is the Soviet Union would make them grow all the crops, and then they would take all of the crops from them, leaving them like in a famine with no food at all.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, so it sounds
No offense,
exactly
Russia.
right.
Sorry.
So when he was born, obviously famine was a huge, huge, huge issue. It actually got even worse when the USSR decided to join, World War I to fight against Germany. Because then not only were they taking extra food to feed their troops, but Ukraine was getting constantly bombed.
And that's where our story begins and ends because he died of starvation. Bye.
You wish.
I know.
So he actually suffered from hydrocephalus at birth. So
that's brutal.
yeah, so this is just like fluid in the brain cavity. Normally, like nowadays, like you could just treat it really easily with like surgical means. Like they pretty much just drain the fluid and like put in a shunt, which most people only like suffer for a couple months. Obviously, this wasn't a thing in the 1930s, so he just had to suffer.
That's cool. So he's already kind of like getting our serial killer checklist.
Yep. So this actually majorly for him led to genital urinary tract issues later in life.
I'm sorry, what?
So he could not get erect ever, like in his entire life. So he could like ejaculate, but he couldn't get erect. I know. We're going to get into a lot of TMI. That is really important later.
What?
Yeah, I guess it just, like, it created, like, a blood flow issue. He also had trouble with bedwetting. He bedwetted until he was, like in his late teens, which was a problem because they lived in a one-room shack and they all shared a bed.
Oh no. I want to feel bad for him, but I don't.
I mean, like, it literally was not his fault. Like, he physically
grew up to be a shit human being. I'm not going to feel bad for you.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, he physically, like, could not control this. And, like, every time it would happen, his mom would, like, beat the shit out of him.
Oh no.
Yeah, so, like, that part of it is actually really sad because that's not his fault.
Killer checklist.
Also, during the war, they burned down his one-room hut.
Oh.
Yeah, it was
that's
bombed
good.
and it burned down. Also, this is my favorite part of his early childhood. His older brother was actually kidnapped and cannibalized by his neighbors in his early childhood.
Do you want to run that by me again?
So that was super common in the Ukraine and during this period. Like there was actually like it's like upwards of like 1 million people that are supposedly like were cannibalized in the Ukraine during this period.
Was Jeffrey Dahmer his neighbor? I have additional questions.
Yeah, so
I mean,
we're already starting out so good, but it only gets worse.
I'm not going to justify this by any means, but I guess if you're in a famine.
I mean, it makes sense. Like the people who get stuck
I hate it.
in the mountains and stuff, like I get it.
He's really got like that serial killer checklist going. Like abusive parents, check. Horrible childhood, check.
So funny enough.
Brain damage, check.
Oh yeah, exactly. So his father, whose name is Roman, which happens to be the name of the only person from Russia I know. Shout out Roman. He was conscripted into the war, of course.
Naturally.
Was captured, held prisoner by Germans. Like, you know, beat the shit out of, was in a prisoner of war camp. So he finally like escaped, got back to the Ukraine, and everyone hated him. They called him a coward. For being allowed to be captured and like the fact that he just didn't go out like dying. So he was like extremely vilified by his countrymen. Andre got like bullied at school heavily. He tried to commit suicide as like a 12-year-old because it was so severe.
Cool. We're starting out great.
Oh,
Also, formal petition to not victim shame POWs, please and thank you.
yeah, that was a huge thing in like the Vietnam War as well. Like because so many people protested the war that like when the veterans came back, like no one supported them, which like it's not their
it's
fault.
not your fault.
Yeah, so you're gonna love this. Painfully shy, his only sexual experience when he was young was he tried to rape a young girl when he was 15.
Of course he did.
Couldn't get a boner, tried to like rape her, came immediately within like a couple seconds of her struggling. So instead of getting in trouble like you would expect, instead he just got bullied even more. Just like
of course he
relentlessly. Weirdly enough, I found nothing that like doesn't seem like the girl cared, doesn't seem like anyone pressed charges or like did anything to him. Well, I'm sure she cared, but like it seems like everyone just kind of used it as a way to roast him instead of doing something.
That's such a dangerous thing to do, is to not report it, because like there's oh god, what's his name? Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. There was a case from his teen years where he like when he worked at a hotel, he
tried to like rape a girl.
Tried to rape somebody, but they were from out of town and they were like, "Well, we don't want to come back to press charges." So
yeah, that's dumb. Press charges.
So like he got fired, but then like it's still stuck with him that like, "Oh, well, I can do this thing and there's not really any ramifications for it."
Yeah, so then so he tried to go like out of out of high school. He tried to go to Moscow State University and he passed the exams, but he just didn't like have the grades to get in. Or no, opposite. He had the grades to get in, couldn't pass their entrance exams.
Doesn't test well. Got it.
So he moved to Rodionovo.
Sure.
Oh God.
We'll go with it.
It is a really, really hard name to say.
can do it.
Nesvetayevsky. In 1960, where he became a telephone engineer. So his younger sister moved in and was like, "Hey, dude, I know you have a really hard time with girls. I know this girl, Faina. She might really like you." So they met up, like that. She hooked the two of them up, and they got married in 1963.
Oh, good.
They had 2 children together. They had Ludmilla in 1965.
Wait.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Wait. They had 2 kids?
They had Ludmilla in 1965, which was a girl, and then their son Yuri in 1969. And
Okay, but how?
yeah, okay, so what would happen, because he couldn't have like normal like penetration?
Wait, is this
sex.
speculation or like?
No, this is like an actual, like this is what happened.
Oh, I'm gonna hate it.
So he would ejaculate and then he would like scoop it up in his fingers and just kind of like shove it in her. Yeah. Yeah, that was like an actual thing. Like she testified to that as well. Like that's how they had both of their children.
And that was successful twice?
She must be very fertile.
Fertile Myrtle over here. Good God.
Or he was just very aggressive.
Nope, we're moving on from that.
Okay,
I don't want
yeah.
to think about it
So in
anymore.
1971, when his son was 2, he tried to become a school teacher after he got a degree in Russian literature from Rostov University. So he did become a school teacher. Didn't last very long. He kept assaulting young children. So he kept getting like assaulting young children, getting kicked out, going to the next school, assaulting young children, getting kicked out, going to the next school. So that happened for actually quite a while. Like that happened from 1971 to 1978, as he was just bouncing from school to school. So
I really hope my exasperated sigh got picked up by the mic.
literally the title of this next part of my notes is Start of the Real Crimes, and in parentheses, nobody's ready. Fuck.
Oh, now we're starting the real crimes.
Oh,
The
yeah, we're not
rape
at
wasn't
crimes
the
now.
real crime.
Oh, no, we're not
The
at crimes yet. I didn't even count that.
assaulting children wasn't the real crime, but now we're getting started.
Yeah, those don't
Great.
even, those
I'm
don't
so
even count.
glad that we're. God, I hate you.
Okay, so December 22nd of 1978, he killed his first victim. It was a 9-year-old girl named Lena Zakhanova. He lured her into an abandoned shed. So she was like walking down the street, and he like lured her into this abandoned shed where he tried to rape her. Why he would try to rape her when he can't get hard, don't know. Obviously, he couldn't get hard.
Wait, didn't you just say she was like 9?
Yeah. So he couldn't get hard, of course, got upset, and he ended up stabbing her 3 times and then strangling her, and then he came. So, like, that was really, like, the catalyst of, like, sex, violence, their one thing.
Okay. First of all, children, stop talking to strangers.
I mean, yeah. Teach your children not to talk to strangers, but,
I hate that every serial killer that ever serial killed has, like, something in their life where somehow they associate violence and sex. Stop it.
yeah, that's
Stop
pretty,
associating the two.
Oh, but the worst part is, someone saw him.
Excuse me?
Like, directly, like, saw him do that. Like, they didn't see him stab her, but, like, they saw him lead her off. And then, like, they found her body in the river, like, 3 days later. But his wife provided such a solid alibi that the police just let him go. So the worst part is they then arrest Alexander Kravchenko, who was a 25-year-old who had just previously had a rape conviction in the area. They tortured him relentlessly until he confessed. And then he was executed in 1984 for the crime.
Okay. Fun fact of the day. Using torture as a way to elicit a confession doesn't fucking work.
Ever. Like ever.
If you push somebody to an edge, they're gonna confess to something, whether they did it or not, just to get you to stop. Like, stop.
Right. So then obviously, like, he got a little spooked because, like, the police knew who he was. So for the next 3 years, he didn't do anything. So by 1981, he could no longer find any teaching jobs.
Gee, I wonder why.
So he started as a clerk in a raw materials factory in Rostov.
Oh, good.
Not good. The travel involved with the position essentially gave him access to unlimited victims for 9 years.
Great.
Like, all over the place. So September 3rd of 1981, 17-year-old Larissa Tichenko became the next victim. He stabbed and strangled her.
Okay.
Gagged her with the dirt and leaves because she was yelling.
Oh, good.
And this killing kind of was, like, the catalyst for... Because, like, he already had the catalyst for, like, sex and violence kind of being one thing. And this was kind of the one that, like, created his signature. So, like, from there, he started going after like young runaways. Like, so he would befriend them at like train stations and bus stops, and then he would like lure them to forest areas nearby, and he would kill them. So he would attack them.
Talk to strangers and don't follow them into the woods.
Like, ever.
Stop it.
He would attack them,
Of course you would.
try to rape them,
Of course, because
boy or girl.
can't.
Couldn't do it, obviously, ever. He would then mutilate them with his knife, which was obviously the substitute for his penis that wasn't functional. That's a really common thing with him, but it's also a lot of serial killers who use knives specifically tend to be impotent, and like that knife kind of becomes their way to like penetrate the body, which they couldn't do otherwise, which is gross. He also, the best part, the part that you're really gonna love,
I hate you.
he would usually eat their sexual organs, or he would remove body parts like the tips of their noses or their tongues.
What? Wait, no.
Oh, it gets worse. He also would mutilate their eyes. He would usually slash across the sockets and then
Stop,
remove
you know
them.
I hate face stuff.
So do I. And he said he thought this was because the victims would carry an imprint of his face in their eyes even after death.
Okay, first of all, that's not how the optic nerve works.
Sounds like remorse to me.
Second of all, I hate you. You know I hate face stuff.
Oh, I also hate face stuff.
Like, I can disembowel, fine. Behead, fine. Chop somebody in half, fine. Do anything with their face, and I'm done.
Eyeballs, teeth, and fingernails are my,
I can't.
those are my hard limits, guys.
Like, I texted Morgan the other day because I found out the Black Dahlia had a Glasgow smile, and I was so uncomfortable because I just can't, I can't deal with face stuff.
I know, it's the worst. I don't like the eating the sexual organs part.
I was trying to gloss over that.
Yeah,
but
that
thank
was-
you for
that
bringing
was
me
the
back
worst
to
part.
that for part 2 of I fucking hate this.
Okay, so before we go on with like Andre himself, I'm gonna get a little bit into like the psychology of it. So like obviously the age-old question is like, why do serial killers do it? Like, what do they get from it?
They're all narcissists.
Well, that's that's part of it. But it says, okay, so the behavioral science unit of the FBI, they've said that serial killers tend to program themselves, usually early in childhood, to become murderers through a consistently intensifying fantasy cycle. So, like, they create these fantasies, like, early on to kind of, like, help them, you know, get rid of anxiety or, like, fear, and then it's, like, can become, like, compulsive.
Yeah.
So, like, then, yeah, they're no longer able to stop. Obviously worse for those who've been abused, neglected, traumatized, which he clearly was. And pretty much every serial killer is confessed to having trauma in their childhood and having fantasies.
Every single one.
Like every single one. And Edward
Bundy, abusive parents. Dahmer, abusive parents.
Kemper,
Mason,
abusive mom.
Kemper.
I have a very fun quote from Edward Kemper right now, actually.
Toy Box.
Edmund Kemper, I think.
What was Toy Box? David Parker Ray.
Yep.
His family was fucked.
So Ed Kemper, who was like the co-ed killer, was also severely abused as a kid, like we said. And he said specifically, and I quote, "I knew long before I started killing that I was going to be killing, that it was going to end up like that. The fantasies were too strong, they were going on for too long, and they were too elaborate."
Gross.
And that kind of seems to be a general thing. So, like, the isolation, the anger, the frustration, like, these become cyclical, like, when the intense fantasies, like, so the fantasies, like, force isolation from society because of, like, the nature of them. But then as they get more isolated, they rely more and more on their fantasies, which withdraws them even more from society. So it just kind of like becomes this big cycle. So like they might fantasize for years and years before they strike out against others. And they usually like obsessively ponder every tiny aspect of like their crime for literal years before they kill someone. And after like committing their first murder, like a lot of serial killers become like obsessed with it. I mean, that's why they're serial killers. So like once they find like the key to like acting out their secret desires, like they continue to murder in order to like experience that fantasy again and again and again. But a lot of them actually become bored with their original fantasy, so kind of like heated with like assaulting the children and then like killing the first girl. Like they become bored with it because they do it and they're like, oh, I mean, that was cool, but like that wasn't exactly what I thought it would be. So they tend to escalate to like more elaborate or like more violent fantasies.
That's how a lot of them end up getting caught too, is that they get like too extra about it.
This is a side note because I wrote, they become bored with their original fantasy once they've actualized it. So they escalate to more elaborate or violent fantasies, an obsessive, addictive pursuit of a more orgasmic high, which why I wrote that, I don't know. I wrote that at like 3 a.m. But a side note on that orgasmic high thing, one of the people we'll be talking about in a later episode, his name is Alexander Pichushkin. You're not ready for all that. But he specifically described his entire criminal career. Are you ready for this?
No.
As a perpetual orgasm.
Hate it.
Yeah, so do I. I hate it a lot. I hate it so much. So yeah, like a lot of ways for understanding serial killers, like rely on like unlocking like the nature, the content of their fantasy, and like how they actualize it. So that kind of helps you figure out like where are they going to strike next? How do we catch them? Where are they coming from? When you kind of understand like what is their fantasy? So like for him, it's like being someone who isn't impotent. Like he has that power, he has that control that he doesn't have in his own life.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the part you are not ready for.
I hate that you.
So this is when the investigation starts, right?
I hate you. Yep. Let's go. Let's do it.
So I don't know if you know this, but in the USSR, they didn't ever really talk about serial killers like in this time period when it was like the actual Soviet Union. First of all, they
super metal.
well, first of all, they wanted to keep order.
Yeah.
So obviously they wanted to minimize any media of anyone who was like going against their rules or like breaking laws or creating chaos like that wanted to not be like a thing. Also, they just actually thought that serial murder was impossible under communism.
Oh.
They're like, oh, communism's too great. Best form of government. We can't even have serial killers. It's not even possible.
Joke's on you guys.
So, like, they kind of had to, like, admit that it was a serial killer, though, because, like, of the specific mutilations that were happening again and again.
Yeah. I think the only thing that I agree with them on is that they weren't, I mean, like you said, they weren't sensationalizing them in the media, and I feel like we do that in America way too much.
So the problem is like when you don't talk about something at all, people will sensationalize it. Like people are always going to sensationalize it no matter what. So people had so many ideas. Everybody was like accusing their neighbors. One of the most popular theories was that there was werewolves loose in the Ukraine.
Stop right there.
I'm not kidding. That's a legitimate, like, a very strong, like, people really, 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 really thought this was werewolves.
No, that box that you just unpacked, I want you to repack it and put it up on a shelf.
Especially, well, I think a lot of it was, like, the eating part of it. They were like, it's got to be an animal.
I tried to forget about that, and you keep bringing it up.
I know you keep trying to forget about it. That's why I keep bringing it up.
Forget about it.
So, my man, Mikhail, 1983, Major Mikhail Fedosov took over the investigation of the serial killings. So he brought in this other dude named Viktor Burakov. Viktor. And he's a forensic analyst. And he was like, we need more help than I can do. Like,
oh, no.
We're bringing in Victor. So they created the original suspect list. It was all registered sex offenders and then the mentally ill.
That's fair.
I have so many problems with that for so many reasons. But, like, okay.
I mean, the sex offenders, I feel like, is a good place to start. But the mentally ill is a little unfair.
But, like, once you look at the crime, like, it's so clear that it's, like, a problem of impotence. So someone who has a problem with impotence is, like, probably not likely to be a registered sex offender.
That's a fair point.
So, and he wasn't a registered sex offender. And he wasn't mentally ill, like, legally mentally ill. Like, in the eyes of the state, he was not mentally ill.
He had hydrocephalus. I promise you he was mentally ill.
Yeah, but according to the state, he was not. So,
the state also, can bite me.
I don't know if you know the Soviet Union much, but they really, really liked their torture interrogations.
They're stellar.
So, yeah, they had hundreds of confessions.
Gee, I wonder why.
Obviously, none of them right. They also, like, they didn't know if they had all the bodies. So they had no idea, like, are these the body counts? Is he burying some of them? Are they in different areas? So they weren't really sure. But, like, with each body, they would get more evidence. Oh, you're going to hate this so much because I hate this so much. So they found out from the evidence at the crime scene that he was an AB blood type because they found, like, semen at at the scene, as well as, like, hair. So we'll get back to that later. Like, that's important. Okay, so 15 victims were added in 1984 alone. And this was kind of the point where they were like, oh shit, like, we actually really do have to do something about this, don't we? So they really, like, expanded their, like, thing. They started, like, these massive, like, surveillance, like, operations because they knew, like, they were being taken from train stations and bus stops. So Chikatilo was actually arrested for acting suspiciously at a bus stop, but they tested his blood type, and his blood type did not match the evidence found. They still put him in prison for 3 months, though. Even though, as far as he was aware, they were totally innocent. Still kept him in prison for 3 months, though, until he finally got released. So his blood type, A, was different from the blood type found at the scene in the other bodily fluids because that was AB.
Did the dumbasses test the victim's blood? Is that what happened? That's what happened, isn't it?
No, he's a non-secretor. Do you know what a non-secretor is?
No.
So a non-secretor, it's actually super interesting. So a non-secretor, if you test their blood directly, it's the only way you can get their blood type. So their blood type will be 1. So his type was A.
Okay.
But all of his other, like, fluids will not be the same blood type. So, like, his saliva, his semen, his hair, like, all of that will not be the same. Or, like, not his hair, but, like, you know what I'm talking about. All of those fluids are not the same as his blood type. So they thought he was different, but they didn't test, like, his semen. They tested his blood type, which was obviously going to be different because he is a non-secretor.
Okay, I hate it, but from a case study standpoint,
Isn't that fascinating?
it makes you the perfect serial killer.
Yeah, like, no one's ever going to test
Ever.
that. Yeah.
Oh, I hate it.
Yeah, so he was released after 3 months, like I said. So he started working as a traveling buyer for a train company.
I'm sorry, what?
I don't even know what that means. To be honest, like, I tried to look it up, and it was like, what do you mean a train buyer?
Is this like our fish peddler? Like, are you going... I don't... Moving on.
I'm assuming he was working for, like, a big company who was, like, maybe going around to other companies, like, looking for cheaper parts or something. I have no idea. But he didn't murder anyone until August 1985, where he killed 2 women that month.
Oh my God.
So Burakov, which is the forensic
Anthropologist.
forensic analyst, good old
I was way off.
Victor. So he hired a psychiatrist named Alexander Bukovonsky. That's wrong.
Sure.
I said that very wrong. So he, like, kind of took a different view to it, and he was like, okay, first of all, this dude's a necrosadist, which he is. So that's, like, someone who receives sexual gratification from the suffering and death of others, which is right on the money. And he also actually was the first one who raised the age of the killer. So they were all looking in, like, between 20 and 30. Like, they thought it was a young person who was doing it. But he was like, no, like, I'm pretty sure this is, like, an older guy, which he was right on the money. So Chikatilo stopped for a while, like I said. So he kind of, like, he stopped, like, most of 1985, killed 2 women in August of 1985. And then he didn't kill again, actually, until 1988. So at this point, like, in 1988, like, all of the crimes happened away from the area he lived now. Okay. So he was no longer taking them from, like, public transportation because they were, like, still even, like, years later, like, they were under heavy surveillance.
The Soviet Union never forgets.
Yeah, he killed 19 more people in the next 2 years.
Are you fucking kidding me?
And for some reason, even though he had taken a break for 3 years because of police pressures, he just suddenly seemed to forget that there was police, and he started killing all of his victims in public places. They were all pretty much all young boys, and he would just kind of, like, follow them down alleys and just kill them in, like, plain sight, just middle of the day. Just where anyone can see them.
Russia, get your shit together.
Yeah, so November 6th of 1990, he was literally walking away from killing Svetka Koroskik, who was his last victim. He was literally like, killed him, took like 10 steps down out of the alley, and then policemen saw him and were like, what were you doing in that alley? And then they turn around, there's like a dead body in the alley, and they were like, oh, come on. But they didn't arrest him.
What?
They did not arrest him, actually.
No.
Even though they also found out that he was a suspect in 1984 in the murder of a young girl, did not arrest him. They actually just started surveilling him. But they did arrest him, what was that, 14 days later on November 20th of 1990, after he was even acting even more suspiciously, like following a young boy, like ready to kill him. They arrested him. But he wouldn't confess. Like he was like, no, didn't do it. Not me. Don't know what you're talking about. Until
wasn't me.
The psychiatrist came, good old Alexander. And so Alexander sat down with him and he was just like, hey, like I'm writing a book, like I'm, a psychiatrist, like I'm really trying to understand like how the killer's like mind works. Like I really want to write about you. Like I want, to write a book about you. And so Chikatilo was like, of course you can write a book about me, like bet. So then he confessed to literally everything.
Yeah.
And like told them all the details. He led the police to like a bunch more of new bodies. Like he literally just like spilled his guts on like every single aspect of everything.
I mean, that was really smart of the psychiatrist because he's touching the like narcissist side of serial killers that almost all of them have.
Yeah, exactly.
But then, like,
they want to feel special.
That also kind of plays into the dissociative identity thing, which we were talking about with Bundy, is that, like, if you get them to talk about it in, like, a third-person narrative, then it lets them detach themselves from what they did, and they'll fucking own up to everything.
Oh, yeah. He didn't even need that. This time he was just like, oh, yeah, dude, like, let me tell you literally every detail. I'll tell you how I ate all of their bodies.
Side, and he was like, oh, yeah, let me just,
so he claims he took the lives of 56 victims. And actually, surprisingly, for a serial killer, because they usually claim like ridiculous numbers.
Yeah.
53 of those are verified. So that's shocking because normally they'll be like, I killed 50 people, and literally like there's like 5 that are verified. No, like there's 53 that are absolutely verified to be him. Police actually originally thought there was only 36 until he started confessing and led them to a bunch more bodies. And they were like, oh, shit, we are terrible at our jobs.
Sir, we were not ready.
Yeah, they were not ready.
Oh,
so he was deemed sane. That's why I said, like, legally in the eyes of the state, like, he was sane. So, like, they said he was fit to stand trial. So he went to court April 14th of 1992, but he literally had to be held in a cage in the courtroom because they were so afraid of what he might do to the victims' families.
I'm so sorry, but you said that and my brain immediately went to like that scene in Harry Potter.
It's literally the scene in Harry Potter with Barty Crouch.
Yeah, yep. Or Barty no, it's not Barty Crouch Jr. It's when they catch Barty Crouch Jr. and it's Igor Karkaroff is like in the cage in the center, and like there's all of the like seats around it, and he's just like in a cage in the center. There's like wait, I'll give you all of the names.
Yeah, that's like pretty much exactly what
I'm
happened.
Picturing is just like a cage in the center of a courtroom.
Like that's literally what it was. Like he wasn't allowed to like sit with his lawyer or anything. Like he was in the cage the entire time. And like so there's been other killers that they have like put in cages. So like Pichushkin was also in cage. But he was in a cage for his own protection. Like, they were afraid that, like, one of the family members or something would go after him.
I mean...
In this case, no. It was to protect the family members from Chikatilo because he was so batshit fucking crazy. So he like, his behavior would, like, change rapidly. So, like, he would go from being, like, so bored he could barely keep his eyes open to, like, incredibly manic, like, pacing around his cage and, like, shouting and, like, everything. He would start singing in gibberish or like shouting in just like tongues. And at one point he even dropped his pants and exposed himself to the entire courtroom. But like he was still sane. They were like, oh yeah, no, he's fine. Like he's fully aware of everything he's doing. He's just doing it to piss all you off.
Stop.
So he was like really upset that the judge was biased against
No,
him.
we're not glossing over that. I'm not over that. Who?
Which is honestly the first time I've ever heard of someone doing that in court.
I've
never heard of that.
So many additional questions.
Luckily, I'm not going to show you a picture of that.
Thank you.
Don't worry, I got you.
I appreciate.
I'm not sure one exists, but I'm hoping they don't. No one wants to see that.
We're not gonna find out. What happens in somebody's brain where they're like, you know what my best defense is gonna be right now? To just drop Trow.
I think he was trying to get, they didn't say this, but like my guess is he was trying to get deemed unfit to stand trial.
I mean,
so he was just doing
was.
everything. But like, it seemed really easy to like see through. Like everyone's like, yeah, like he's just faking it. Like he's just being a dumb piece of shit. So like the judge was really biased against him.
Gee, I wonder
which
why.
he was like upset about, but everyone's like,
you have no room to be upset,
no
sir.
shit. So like he was obviously convicted. He was convicted October 15th of 1992 of 52 of the 53 murder trials, and he was sentenced to death for every single one.
Please tell me he got like railroaded in prison. I need the poetic justice.
It took over an hour to read off his sentencing.
What?
Because he had so many crimes, and they have to read them all separately. And he was sentenced to death separately 52 times. Like, instead of just being like, yeah, we're going to kill him, they sentenced him to death for every single one of them. Which, like, that's really overkill. Like, overkill times 52.
But
I'm not saying he didn't deserve it. I'm just saying that's really extra.
Is it bad that I could totally see Russia being like, okay, here's this muscle relaxer. Psych, here's the antidote. There's one.
Right, like just keep like killing him and bringing him back.
All right, shock. Whoops, your heart stopped. Shock. Look at that, it's back into rhythm. 2.
I wish.
Just hit the mic.
I wish so hard that was what happened. So I was right. He tried to appeal to be determined like insane, and they were like, "No, you dumb piece of shit.
No,
you're gonna die." So they killed him February 14th of 1994, which was just like,
how?
It seems kind of rude. Like, why Valentine's Day?
Oh,
Like, that's rude to everyone else.
It didn't even click.
Like, why Valentine? Like, literally could have just done, like, February 13th.
I wonder if, like, executions in Russia are as sensationalized as they are here. And then I want to know how many couples were in the audience.
They killed him with a single gunshot to the back of the head. So, like, the most, like, cliche, like, boring... He didn't suffer.
Russia going hard.
But, like, that's, like, the most, like, cop-out
it's
thing.
a super
like, he
cop-out.
didn't suffer. Like, he was fine.
But, well...
Like, they said he was killed instantly.
Oh.
So, like, yeah, he didn't suffer at all. I think he could have...
That's a bummer.
I think he could have done worse. He was in solitary that whole 2 years as well, so no one would kill him.
I mean,
I kind of wish someone would have killed.
That makes me sad, because I really...
He probably would have suffered a lot more.
Like, I just want him to get railroaded by the friggin' biggest prisoners there, but...
Yeah, so this was really like... Like, Russia didn't really know how to handle this too well. Because, like I said, like, they never had a serial killer really before. Like, nothing of this, like, nature. And, like, they literally, like, genuinely did not believe that...
They could have one.
Like, they could have one. So, like, they didn't know how to handle it for, like, a long time, which is why they dropped the ball for literally, like, 15 years. But now... Like, now they approach it differently. Like, in a future episode when we talk about Pichushkin, like, he's also a Russian serial killer. And they approach it much differently, even though it was, like, only... Like, this was around the same time period as that.
Okay.
I told you you'd hate every minute of this episode.
Okay. Bye. Just bye.
But also...
No.
Follow us on... Facebook.
Okay.
At Bitches and Murders Podcast.
I thought you had more.
Patreon at Bitches and Murders Podcast. Twitter, which is just and Murders. And Instagram, which is Bitches and Murders Podcast.
I thought you were going to try to throw more details at me. And I was like, no, bye.
You mean you don't want to hear more about eyeballs?
No, I hate face stuff.
Just wait till this episode's over and I show you all the pictures I have.
No.
She doesn't get to escape from this one, guys. You don't get out of it that easily.
No. Go ahead. Let them hear my reactions to the pictures. This is going to be great. Are we going to post these on the Instagram?
I don't know if we can.
I mean,
Instagram I feel like actually has pretty lax rules.
I was going to say, I feel like if we just put like our little warning graphic content.
Yeah, because there's a really cool girl. I'd have to look up what it is, but she runs like an autopsy, like Instagram. Like she's like a medical examiner.
That's amazing.
And she like informs people about it, I guess.
That's kind of cool.
Which is kind of dope. But like she posts some really graphic things and she gets away with it. Like that's literally her whole Instagram account. So first of all, I want you to peep this fit. This one can definitely go on the Instagram, but peep this motherfucking
What is this
fit.
shirt that he's wearing?
Is this not the best thing you've ever seen in your life? Yeah, that'll be the first picture on the Instagram. I just want you all to appreciate that. It's not even gory. It's just beautiful.
He's wearing like a checkerboard shirt, but he's got like that stereotypical Russian thing going on where it's just unbuttoned to
like
his like sternum. He had the deep
I'm
V.
so glad that trend does not come back. This is
it's gonna. It's good.
one of his older victims. One of the runaways that they found.
Yeah, look at that. She's on the forest floor.
Oh, you're really not ready for this one. This was a few more. Just a little taste of what he would do to people.
Oh, her eyes.
Yeah, none of them have eyes.
Oh.
Or genitals. Or like other bits and pieces.
Why?
Yeah, I don't get it either.
I'm gonna hate myself for
Especially because they're all
joke.
like kids.
I hate myself for making this joke, and Mom, I'm so sorry, but like, I know that people talk about eating pussy, but you don't take it that far.
You gotta stop before this. It needs to stay attached. I promise. It needs to stay attached. There are laws about this.
Keep it spooky, but not that spooky.
Yeah, don't keep it that spooky.
That's
guys.
a little too spooky.
Dial back the spook, guys.
Oh my god, I hate it. I hate myself for making that joke.
Definitely check in next week for our next episode because actually our next episode is a follow-up to this episode because our next serial killer was inspired by this guy.
What?
Sierra's not ready.
Why? Why are you doing this to me? I just present you with like weird things that aren't solved.
I just
and
like to
are
watch you suffer.
I present you with spooks and you present me with this.
Oh, she's really not ready for these future episodes.
Okay, bye. This was our
Keep it spooky.
fourth and last episode. Okay, bye. I hate you.
I wish I could say that's the worst to come, but it's not.